Shvua Tov, everyone. Good vach. So it's Motzaei Shabbos Parashas Korach and Chutz La'aretz. Sorry, Korach and Chutz La'aretz Chukas in Eretz Yisrael. Also, just getting out of Gimel Tammuz. So I heard two wonderful stories of the Rebbe in Shul that I'm going to share. Maybe we'll get to another story as well. The story that Rabbi Butman told in Yerushalayim here over Shabbos was as follows: that there was once a Rabbi Binyamin Klein, who was the Rebbe's secretary, one of the Rebbe's secretaries, once was in Eretz Yisrael, and he met a person. Person's name is known, just the person forgot it when he told over the story yesterday. That Rabbi Binyamin says, "No, so you know that we had a story together." He goes, "What do you mean we had a story together? You saved my life." And he said the story again, that the Rebbe once went to the doctor. He wasn't feeling well, and he went to the doctor, and the doctor said that the condition was severe, and so severe that they had to operate immediately, and he had no time. His life was in danger. So he says he's a chassid, and as a chassid, he has to ask the Rebbe first. The problem was it was like 2 o'clock in the morning in New York, so he doesn't know what to do. But he said, you have to operate. He goes, I have to wait a few hours until the Rebbe's up for me to ask. He says, in a few hours, you could call the Chevra Kadisha. You could call the burial committee, because you don't have a few hours to. Hey, Rebecca, we're just telling the story of the Rebbe I heard in Shul this week. So this person says he's sick, and the doctor tells me he has to have an operation. He says he only has a few hours. He goes, he has to call the Rebbe, but it's the middle of the night, and the doctor's told him he doesn't have time to wait. He doesn't know what to do, so he decides to call Rabbi Binyamin Klein. Rabbi Binyamin Klein is the Rebbe's secretary. He figured he'll call in the middle of the night. What could he do? He calls in the middle of the night. I'm not sure if it was those days. I don't believe there were cell phones then. And Rabbi Binyamin gets the phone call, and he says, I don't know what to do. The Rebbe's already home. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. He says, Rabbi Binyamin, the doctors say that if I wait a few hours, I won't live to ask. But I don't feel comfortable to do what the operation that they're suggesting unless I get a bracha from the Rebbe. So he says, okay, wait a second. So he calls the Rebbe's home, and the Rebbetzin answers and he tells the Rebbe, so Rebbetzin, I'm sorry, I'm called you so late, but I don't know what to do. This person says it's pekuach nefesh, it's a life-threatening situation. Hey, Ariel, good vach. And I have to ask the Rebbe if he should take this operation. He explained in the situation. He explained the Rebbetzin the situation. The Rebbetzin says, hold on. And she went evidently to ask the Rebbe, and she came back and she says the Rebbe said he should do the operation. So he does the operation, and so seemingly that's the end of the story. Rabbi Binyamin, the story is being told by Rabbi Binyamin at a Fabrengen after Gimel Tammuz, after the Rebbe passed away, to the person who the story happened to. They're having a discussion, so at a public Fabrengen. So the Rabbi Binyamin says, now let me tell you the rest of the story. The whole night afterwards, I felt very bad. I called the Rebbe at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I woke her up. He thought he woke her up, or he disturbed her for sure. So he calls back the next day, and he tells the Rebbetzin, I want to apologize for calling you so late and disturbing you and bothering you in the middle of you and the Rebbe during the sleep. So the Rebbetzin answered, and she answered in Yiddish. It was mir. Mir in Yiddish is we. Seinen herabgekommen zum Welt. We came down to this world, meaning her and her husband, the Rebbe, and the Rebbetzin, is to only help people. That's our whole mission. That's the only reason why we're here, is to help people. She said, me and my husband came down to this world only to help people. So we have to thank you for giving us an opportunity to do our mission in this world. That's one story I heard in Shabbos, in Shul this week for Gimel Tammuz. The second story I heard, and then let's maybe have time for a third story, is that Rabbi Butman told over. He said that his father tells the story, and that there was he once met a chassid of a non-Chabad circles in by the Rebbe's oil, and he says, maybe you have a story of the Rebbe you want to share. Because actually I do. He said, I'm a chassid from Williamsburg, as you could see. And Williamsburg is a place in New York, those who are familiar, of other Chassidim, not Chabad. And he says that I heard about the Rebbe, It was mamish the early years of the Rebbe's leadership. I heard about the Rebbe and I had questions that I needed answers to immediately for his business or what have you, something that was very urgent. So he drove to Crown Heights. He never met the Rebbe, he never seen the Rebbe. So he figured he has to find the Rebbe and he's going to go ask him questions. He didn't even know how the Seder, how things were worked in Chabad. So he happened to be, as he pulled up to 770, who's walking in 770? The Rebbe. So he runs over to the Rebbe and he says, younger man, sir, young person, maybe you know where I could find the Lubavitcher Rebbe. So the Rebbe tells him, why do you need to speak to the Lubavitcher Rebbe? So he's, who are you, first of all? Like, where you come from? He says, so-and-so, he comes from Williamsburg. He goes, why do you have to speak to the Lubavitcher Rebbe? Because I have questions that I must ask him immediately. And it's very important. So the Rebbe says, I don't understand. You live in Williamsburg. Why? There's plenty of Rebbes in Williamsburg. Why don't you go to one of the local Rebbes in Williamsburg? So he puts his hand on the Rebbe's shoulder and he says, young man, he goes, you understand about a Rebbe like you understand about a cat. You have to know who a Rebbe is. So this question, you have to go to a real Rebbe for such questions. And then he ran into 770 and they told him, that doesn't work like that. You can't just meet the Rebbe. You have to go to Rabbi Chadakov, the Rebbe's secretary's office, and make an appointment for yechidus. So he was very distraught about that because he wanted to go in right away, but he had no choice. He made his appointment early years, and he's waiting 2 o'clock in the morning. Everyone comes in. They're saying Tillim, and he walks into the Rebbe's room. He still's never met the Rebbe before. He walks into the Rebbe's room, and they're sitting at the tables. The person who he kind of had harsh words for. He says, you know about Rebbe like a cat, and he was so embarrassed. He said the Rebbe had a smile on his face the entire time. The Rebbe found it very humorous, and he says the Rebbe gave me a bracha, and everything I needed done was taken care of. So that's 2 stories connected to Gimel Tammuz. So we'll do another story or two for Motzaei Shabbos. I read a beautiful story. Rabbi Tillis, I think, tells the story of Rav Mordechai. So the Mordechai, this is the power of prayer. We have a lot of prayer in this week's parsha in Korach that talks about Moshe davening and Hashem about how he felt Hashem should deal with the situation in Korach. I guess that's the connection to this week's parsha. So the Ramad Chaliyahu was a young Rav. Ramad Chaliyahu, surely everyone knows, was the chief rabbi of Eretz Yisrael from the Sephardi community. And he was the youngest dayan, I think. He became a dayan in south of Israel, Beersheba, in 1957, at the age of 28. And that was the youngest at the time in modern history of someone to become a dayan, means a judge of the Jewish people. And again, so those days there weren't many bezdins, so that served the whole south of Eretz Yisrael. He said that there was once a woman, he came in and you see a woman always standing outside, davening, praying. And he paid attention to her, but he didn't want to bother her. But after a while, she was there, and every day she was there, standing outside davening. He asked his attendant to call her in. He calls her in, and he says, "Young woman, what's going on?" So she says, "I'm an Ola. I'm a person who came from Morocco, from North Africa, and they settled us around over here in this area." And so I found out where the Bezdin is, and I want to daven. She goes, "What's the story?" She goes, "Well, I got married when I was in Morocco, and right after the Shever brachas, mamish nebach. After the Shever brachas, because my husband was a taxi driver, he got into a crash. Evidently, he died, but they never recovered the body, and because that they knew of, they couldn't. It seems like there was a lack of communication somewhere or another, and basically the Rabbanim, the Bezdin of Morocco, wouldn't allow her to remarry, because they weren't certain if he passed away. So now she's here. Maybe she felt that the rabbis of Eretz Yisrael would be able to help her. So he says, "Okay, I understand. So why didn't you ever come in? You're just standing outside davening." She goes, "Why should I come in? I'm not davening to you. I'm davening to God. I come to daven. That God's going to help me." So Ramat Chaliyahu was very taken by her story, and he took all her documents and he went through everything. So he went to the Baba Sali, the holy Baba Sali. Rav Agon, Rabbi Tzaddik, Rabbi Yisrael Abu Chatzira, and buried in the Tivot. Of course, everyone knows the greatness of the Baba Sali. And he suggested he go to his brother, the Bab Sali's brother, I think his name was Baba Chaki, and who was in Ramla, also serving the Sephardi community. Some way or another, because he was involved, he knew more about what was going on in Morocco with the Chevra Kadisha. And he said that the Baba Chaki says that there actually were two members of the Chevra Kadisha in Morocco that lived in Israel, one in Dimona and another one in another place, that he suggested that he go speak to them, maybe they could help. So he says he lives in the south. He'll go to Dimona first. He goes to Dimona and he comes in there. He goes to the address and he realizes that people are there. He says, "What's happening? We're sitting shiva for so and so," which was one of the people. So he was disappointed to know that of the two people, one had just passed away. But he came into the house, so he said already start to speak. And in his speaking, he told why he was there. Immediately jumped up another person and said that I'm the other person from the Chevra Kadisha on your list. And he was able to confirm that they actually did bury a taxi driver, and all the, obviously, halachic investigations were able to match. And he was able to free this woman of her situation of being an aguna, tied woman, and she was able to remarry. So, the schusam of all these tzaddikim, Yagin Aleinu, should protect us, and we should have all our brachas and all our tefillas answered. And in the way of Ad Meher Yards Dvorei, this is a week of Kohanim, that it should be fast, like we learned in the Likutei Torah this week, the Birchas Kohanim that talks about in the Mati Aaron, the staff of Aaron breaks through all barriers and all challenges in a fast way. So may we be blessed, all of us, on Motzaei Shabbos tonight, in the month of Tammuz, right after Gimel Tammuz, with all the brachas and everything we need, each of us as individuals and Klal Yisrael as a whole, for B'toiv Hanir V'Nigel B'Gashim Spruchnis and Shmir and Eretz Yisrael and Klal Yisrael. All right, let's bring up the halachos of the day. We're learning the laws of tefillah. So let's bring it up. So we're still in the end of chapter 21, and we're learning the laws of Chazaras Hashatz, the repetition of the Amidah. Sorry, not Chazaras Hashatz, we're holding the laws of Ta'us, the person who made a mistake in the Shemona Esrei. Now, I believe we're holding law number 7. Okay, so we said that when a person makes a mistake, he or she, in the Shemona Esrei, so in law number 6, we learned that when you have to repeat two Shemona Esreis, so you go into the night that you go into, let's say it's Rosh Chodesh at night. So you do the two Shemona Esreis as the tefillah you're davening then. For instance, if you forget Mincha Shabbos afternoon, which is a tefillah of Chol, so when you do two Shemona Esreis, you do two Shemona Esreis of Friday Shabbos. Even though you're making a Tashlumin, you're fixing the lacking of a tefillah's Chol, of a weekday prayer. But nevertheless, when it comes to do two Shemona Esreis and one as to make a Tashlumin, you would do two Friday night Shabbos Shemona Esreis, which is different than had you davened the proper one. And so forth, everything. So if you go into the next, and things that have to be added, the only thing we learned about was Atachan Antanu. That Atachan Antanu is that then you would, if you forget Shemona Esrei, Friday night, Motzaei Shabbos, so you would only say Atachan Antanu in the second Shemona Esrei, which is the Tashlumin, for Motzaei Shabbos, and same thing Mincha. If you forget Mincha Shabbos and you have to do two Arvises, so then you don't say the Havdalah twice. You say the Havdalah in the first Shemona Esrei. So basically, we say the Shemona Esrei that we're in the time that we're making it up. Well, it's appropriate for that time. So if you missed something of the week and you're going into a Yom Tov or a Shabbos or a Rosh Chodesh, etc., you always go according to where you're holding. Now he adds one more thing. Tov Rosh Chodesh b'Mincha. So let's say you daven Shemona Esrei Mincha, and it was Rosh Chodesh, and you didn't say Yalav Yavi. Now, if you forget the Yalav Yavi, you would have to say another time Shemona Esrei. It means you have to do it again. And it's not 2 day Rosh Chodesh, which means that by night you wouldn't say Yalav Yavi. Imkein af pi is imkein af im yispal arvishtayim la yaviach klum. So now the question is like this: If so, in theory, I forgot Yalav Yavi Mincha. I have to repeat the Shemon Esrei. But now that I'm ready, I reminded myself, whatever the reason is, I only reminded myself now that in the Mincha that I davened, I missed out Yalav Yavi. But if I'm going to do a repeat tefillah, I'm still not going to say Yalav Yavi because we go according to the tefillah that you're holding. So the question is, do I do it again or not? So he says there's no point in doing it again because you don't gain anything. Because anyways, you're not going to say the Alav Yavi. We don't say Alav Yavi at night because it's already after Rosh Chodesh. And if you're going to say, well, you have to do another one, but you did the tefillah already. You just didn't do the tefillah with the Alav Yavi. So in this case, you don't make it up. So again, if it's Mincha, Rosh Chodesh, and you forgot the Alav Yavi, so you did the Shemon Esrei the way you're supposed to. The only thing what you were missing and what would cause you to repeat the Shemon Esrei, had you reminded yourself before Ma'ariv, would be the fact that you did Mincha, but you didn't do it with the Alav Yavi. Now that it's Ma'ariv and you remembered that you didn't do Alav Yavi Mincha, if you're going to do a repeat of the Shemon Esrei, you're still not going to say Alav Yavi. So then there's no point in doing a repeat of the Shemon Esrei. Let's see footnote number 19. Explanation. At Mincha, you did pray a bit without Yalav Yavi. Subsequently, all that is lacking is Yalav Yavi. This is really a question of how we look at missing Yalav Yavi. And since at the makeup prayer you won't compensate for Yalav Yavi because it's not Rosh Chodesh, it's no longer being Rosh Chodesh. Therefore, no compensation is possible, so you can't fix the problem. According to the Mishnah Brura, however, even if it's a regular weekday, you should make up the prayer with the condition as stated in note number 9, which is, if I remember correctly, note number 9 was the idea of Nedava, I think. Let's just see. To make a condition. If I'm obligated to this prayer, then it's fulfilled my obligation. If not, it's considered voluntary. Okay. So because it's a little bit of a suffix, what you do, the question, seemingly what the suffix would be, why you should have to repeat the Shemon Esrei, even though you don't have to say it, you can't say Alav Yavai, is because the question is when you're lacking something, is it considered like you did it, but you did it lacking something? Or is it a faulty prayer totally? So now that you're making it up, even if you're not going to say the Alav Yavai now, but you're going to do the proper prayer. But by Mincha was a faulty prayer, which means it weakens the entire prayer, not just the part that is missing. That would be the thinking. So if the thinking is that it affects the entire prayer, then you would have to do it again, even though you're not going to add the Shemon Esrei, the Yalav Yavi, because when you daven the second time, you're davening in the way you should. It's like a kind of a chefze gavra. Does this affect the person? The person was mixing Yalav Yavi, or does it affect the quality of the whole tefillah? It's not really chefze gavra, but within the chefze itself. Okay. Tfilas Musaf, when it comes to the Musaf prayer. Again, what is the Musaf? The word Musaf means the additional prayer, which is when we daven an additional prayer on Shabbos, Yom Tov, Rosh Chodesh, when they did the Musaf sacrifice. Again, the Tfilas are keneged karbonos tiknu, right? So our prayers are corresponding to the different sacrifices of the time. On Rosh Chodesh is a special sacrifice every morning, every day. They had the Tamid Shel Shachar and Shel Ben Arbaim. We have the morning and afternoon prayer, which the word Tamid means from the word Tamidus, consistent. Every morning they had the morning and afternoon prayers. Because of that, we have the morning and afternoon prayer. We had the morning and afternoon sacrifices. Because of that, we have the afternoon and morning prayers, connected the karbonis of Tamid. And Ma'ariv is connected the parts that were burnt that evening. Now, the Musaf, if it's a Rosh Chodesh, then there's another prayer called Musaf that we're adding, especially for the Rosh Chodesh, Yom Tov, Shabbos has a Musaf, etc. So what about by Tfilas Musaf? Alpha Pishas Manakol Yom. We said that Musaf, like the sacrifice, it can be done throughout the day until the evening. Vimkain, Havi Ma'ariv Tfilas Muchala. What's really technically the next prayer? Because you can't say Mincha is the next prayer, because they almost go side by side, even though it's always you should, because really at the same time Mincha finishes when the Musaf finishes, although you're supposed to do the Musaf before the Mincha. So you could say really the next prayer is the Arvis, is the Ma'ariv. You can't, if you miss a musaf, you don't do two tefillas arvis for the musaf. Mishum the tefillas musaf niskena. Mishum unishama parmis v'seinu. V'kivin she'avis mane batal kabane. So here he says an interesting idea, that because it's a sacrifice, and it's an additional sacrifice, it means the tefillah is corresponding to the sacrifice. And it's a sacrifice that's very time sensitive. I mean, you only do the sacrifice in the Yom Tov Rosh Chodesh. So comes the Ma'ariv. It's not its time of Musaf. So in the Musaf sacrifice, we say, which is the Tefillah, which corresponds to the sacrifice, that batal zmanai, or over zmanai, but once you pass its time, meaning the time when you could do the carbon, the carbon's finished. It's a special carbon that's very time sensitive. And therefore, you can't make up for the Tfilas Musaf. Let's see the footnotes that's going to help us explain this a little better. Since there's no interruption between the end of Musaf period and the start of Mariv period, like I said, we learned before, that Musaf could go until the same end of Mincha. Again, we're supposed to do the Musaf before Mincha. We do the Musaf prayer. It's usually we do in the Karbanis, you did the Talmud in the morning, and then you did the Musaf sacrifice, then you did the Ben Arbaim sacrifice. So therefore, if the tefillos are corresponding to the sacrifices, we have Shachris, Musaf, Mincha. Everyone knows that's how we do it in Shul, right? We do Shachris, Musaf, and then we have lunch, what have you, and then we do Mincha towards the evening whenever we do Mincha, and then we do Mariv. But halachically, Musaf finishes at the same time Mincha does. So really the next slot of prayer would be Mariv. So he says in the footnote number 21, so the people of Israel, he says, let the offerings of the lips replace the bullocks, meaning the carbon, that the tefillah is corresponding to the carbon. The people of Israel ask that their prayers be accepted in place of the sacrifice that can no longer be brought because of the destruction of our holy temple. In effect, our prayer is a substitute for our sacrifices, like we've learned. Thus, the Musaf prayer is a substitute for the Musaf sacrifice. And because you can no longer do the Musaf sacrifice and it no longer exists, it's Batal Karbanai, the Talmud is consistently. So therefore, Shachris Mincha Ma'ariv you can always make up, even if the Shachris Tefillah on Shabbos, meaning the in the Beis HaMikdash, of course, we had Shabbos was Shabbos and Yom Tov was Yom Tov and the weekdays and Rosh Chodesh, everything was different. But in the sacrifices itself, the different sacrifice was in the Musaf. The morning and the afternoon sacrifices were the same in Shabbos as they were during the week. So even though today our nusach of tefillah for Shabbos is not the nusach of tefillah of the week, so therefore, but it's still corresponding to the Talmud sacrifices. So what that means spiritually for a sacrifice, it could be, of course, the Hayom Yom was different, and the Shira of the Levium were different, the songs of the Levium were different, and they did the Shira on the Karbanos. But nevertheless, the tefillah itself, the nusach, the sacrifice itself is the same. So therefore, even if you miss a Ma'ariv of Shabbos or a Mincha of the week, and you're going into the next tefillah, that's kind of a different, it's not the same nusach of what you daven the Shabbos or the week, however, whatever it is that you're making up for. But it corresponds to the same sacrifice, which is the Talmud. So therefore, we can make up a Ma'ariv of Shabbos in the weekday and vice versa, or Mincha of the weekday and Shabbos. And we would do two of the tefillahs of Shabbos, like we said. But a Musaf, once the time passes, you can't make it up. Okay. Number 23. The Ma'ariv prayer takes place after nightfall when the Musaf sacrifice can no longer be sacrificed. It is therefore too late to compensate. Although you can no longer do the Shachris either, or the Mincha either, but because he did the Talmud Rabbeinu Abayim, but the Talmud are the same sacrifices. Okay. So again, a person forgets Shachris, so you have to do two minchas. You forget Ma'ariv, you have to do two Shachris. In Mushliach, so what do you do? But you're the Chazan. If you're going to daven two Shemona Esreis, you are going to be matriach the tzibur. You're going to be an annoyance to the congregation who has to wait for you to make up. But if I have to, especially if you want to daven each one barichos, right? So you want to daven two Shemona Esreis. Never now is going to wait because you have to daven two Shemona Esreis because you're the shliach tzibur, you're the Chazan. So what do you do? So he says it's not so difficult. Do one Shemona Esrei quietly. That would be the one, like we said, for the chiyuv of the day. And the repetition is going to make up for your tashlumin. So you don't have to keep the crowd waiting. because we know how important Tircha de Tzipura is, the congregation's time, and therefore we can't be wasteful in the congregation's time, and you could use the repetition as your Tashlumin. By the way, in certain shuls, if you notice, you won't see this on Shabbos typically, but you'll notice during the week, sometimes a mincha, where someone will be the chazan, and then someone will take his place to do the repetition. A lot of times, what's happening is that the person that is repeating didn't daven shachris yet, didn't do the Shemona Esrei yet, or mincha, whatever it is. So he'll take the lead and do his silent Shemona Esrei loud. Whether that's okay to do is another discussion, but you see that all the time. So we see clearly that the repetition could be used as obligatory Shemona Esrei. Having omitted Ma'ariv the previous evening, that's what you need two, or two mincha tefillas having omitted Shacharis in the morning. So then you do Shemona Esrei aloud. Okay, let's see the footnote here. Having in mind, so you should have in mind on the repetition, that this is your make-up prayer in addition to the regular intent that the chazan must have to exempt those worshippers who are unable to pray on their own. That's why we do the repetition, is for the chazan to be motzaei, the people who can't pray, so they listen to the chazan. That's why we follow along with the chazan, and we answer Baruch Hu Baruch Shmoi Amen. So this is in case to make up if anything's missing. Now so the chazan has to have that in mind. But in this case, he also has in mind to make up for his own personal Shemona Esrei that wasn't done the night before, what have you. Note, if the entire minyan omitted the previous prayer, okay, so let's say no one davened mincha, so everyone is davening two maros, right? So if the entire minyan omitted the previous prayer, they cannot depend on the chazan's repetition of the Shemona Esrei to exempt them from the makeup prayer, but each must do so on his own. So the Pri Megadim says doesn't follow up this with the continuation, which would be, if that's the case, would the chazan do a silent Shemona Esrei twice? Because anyways, everyone else is doing it, or he's still better not to keep the congregation waiting, do the repetition for himself on the second one, and everyone makes it up on their own themselves. He doesn't continue, but I'm assuming that in such a situation where the whole crowd anyways has to do two Shemona Esreis, there'd be nothing wrong for the chazan to do a silent Shemona Esrei second time himself. Although he could still be motzaei himself with a loud Shemona Esrei. Maybe in this case it's better. It shouldn't be too many prayers. All right. Mishin stapikla mispala. Let's say you don't remember. That happens. We don't remember. Did I daven or not? Because nowadays we try not to do what's called a gift prayer. You should not repeat the prayer, basically saying the Mishnah Berurah tonight that if this is a chiyuv, then it's a chiyuv, it's a nedavar. But he says we don't do a Shemona Esrei nedavar nowadays. So therefore, let's see 27. So therefore, if you don't know, then just leave it. Okay. A voluntary. What is an tefillas nedavar? The tefillas nedavar means a voluntary prayer. Our sage permitted praying a voluntary Shemona Esrei, provided you add something new, the Chadish by David Sarah, that you added something new, because if then it's just a wasteful prayer. In other words, you must pray for something that you have not prayed for before. The laws for adding something new are complicated and controversial. It is therefore advisable to refrain from voluntary prayer, if at all possible. For details of Tefillas and Dava, see Shulchan Aruch, chapter 107. So this is the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. He's giving us the short version, and as such, he's saying to us that we don't do Tefillas and Dava. So if you have a suffix, then don't do another tefillah. Again, this is all relying on the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. One has to check. The footnotes didn't advise us anything different. So we're assuming that this is the final ruling. Any questions before we complete the class? Next week we'll start the next laws of Tachnun. So we won't start now because it gives us first a preface, and we should have the laws of Tachnun we should learn separately. But if there's any questions on today's class, otherwise, Laila Tov, Shavua Tov. Thank you.
Wait, Rabbi, what about like if on Rosh Chodesh I'm benching and
Sorry?
what about if I'm benching on Rosh Chodesh and I'm almost at the end and then I realize I forgot Ya'alev Yavo? Do I say it again?
Yeah, but that you're saying again because you're saying again. It's not a tefillah. It's not like here we're talking about the Shemona Esrei. that you forget it and you didn't. If you forget the Shemona Esrei and you remember when it's still time, is that then you just do it again. But if you forget it and it's only the next tefillah's time, like mincha, that's the question. But in the case of Birchas Hamazon, depending on what you forgot, if what you forgot is something that we repeat, then you would repeat this, the benching again.
So my question is Ya'alev Yavo something that you would repeat it for?
Yes, Yav Yav is something we repeat for.
Okay, thank you.
All right, everyone. Just want to
Thanks.
you got me off guard, so let me just 100% make sure. Um, yes, I believe so. Yes, Yav Yavi is something you do go back for.
And then if I forgot it during Shemona Esrei, then I would repeat Shemona Esrei, right?
Yes, you repeat Shemona Esrei if you forgot it. If you forgot, you have to repeat the Shemona Esrei. Yes.
Okay, got it. Thank you so much.
All right. Later, Tov,
Shavua
everyone.
tov.
Take care. Shavua Tov.